corners of the planet where time stopped running, where the jungle grows so dense that noon seems like sunset, where the heat sticks to the skin, where silence has texture. Under a ceiling of interlaced branches that no ray of sun fully pierces, over dark currents that glide without making a sound, something living moves among the shadows. There are creatures here that have dominated this territory since before our species existed, others that seem designed by a logic different from the world we know. In the interior of those rivers, something with a mouthful of knives tears the current in a fraction of a second. Among the leaves on the ground, something without bright colors or warning signs kills with a precision that does not need speed. And among the highest branches, something with an almost human gaze evaluates the forest with an intelligence that science still does not know how to fully measure. Here, nothing is innocent, and nothing is what it seems at first glance. Today, we venture into one of the oldest and most brutal ecosystems on the planet, a territory where every species that has survived has spent millions of years perfecting one single thing: not dying. What you are about to see is not fiction. It is happening right now, while you are watching this, thousands of kilometers from here, in a darkness that few human beings have stepped in. If you are not yet part of this channel, subscribe and activate notifications. What comes next, you won't want to see only halfway. Beneath the surface of an African river where the water has the color of dark mud and the current erases any trace of what happens inside, something waits. There are no bubbles, there is no perceptible movement, only still water with the appearance of a vacuum. And underneath, a hunting machine. You will not hear it, you will not see it approaching. When it acts, it will already be too late for any animal that is nearby. This is the Goliath Tigerfish, the predator that the fishermen of the Congo have learned to respect like no other. Its anatomy is that of a weapon built by millions of years of evolution without compromise. The body reaches 1 meter in length and nears 50 kilograms. Every muscle is arranged for a single function, to accelerate. But what no description fully prepares you for are the teeth. 16 in the upper jaw, 16 in the lower. Each one of them fits with its opposite when the jaws close, like the teeth of two gears designed to release nothing. They do not tear, they pierce, they hold. They prevent any escape from the first contact. It lives in the Congo River and its network of tributaries, the second largest river system in the world by volume and also one of the deepest. In some sections, the waters exceed 200 meters in depth. Visibility inside is practically zero. Hunting blind in those conditions requires something more than eyes. The Goliath tigerfish has along its entire body a network of sensory receptors called the lateral line that detects the pressure waves that any movement generates in the water. It does not need to see its prey. It feels its displacement, calculates its trajectory, and acts. Everything in less time than it takes a human being to blink. The jaws close, the water churns, and in tenths of a second, the river recovers its usual calm, as if nothing had interrupted that darkness. But the river is not the only place where this jungle kills without warning. There is something on the ground that has spent centuries without needing to move to be the most effective predator of the forest. It makes no noise. It sends no signals. And if you step on it without knowing, the story ends there. There is something on the floor of this jungle that cannot be distinguished from dead leaves, not because it is small, but because it has spent millions of years perfecting the art of being invisible in plain sight. It does not flee, it does not warn, it does not change position. It waits, with the patience of something that knows the world will eventually come toward it. This is the Gaboon Viper, the venomous snake with the longest fangs on Earth. Its skin is a mosaic of triangles, rhombuses, and lines in brown, beige, black, and purple that reproduces with a logic-defying accuracy the appearance of the African forest floor. Military camouflage researchers have studied this pattern. No one has managed to replicate it artificially with the same level of effectiveness. It can remain completely motionless for days. Not metaphorical days, literal days, waiting for something to walk toward it. And when it happens, what follows lasts less than half a second. The fangs, which at rest fold against the palate like closed razors, deploy at the moment of the attack to exceed 5 centimeters in length. No other venomous snake reaches that size. They are long enough to pierce through most clothing and reach directly into the muscle or a blood vessel. The venom they inject is a combination of 3 simultaneous mechanisms. It destroys tissue at the entry point, it blocks blood clotting, and it acts on the nervous system. The effects begin in minutes. Without immediate medical treatment, a bite is fatal. The speed of the attack has been measured. It's one of the fastest among all the snakes in the world, which is especially disconcerting in an animal that weighs several kilograms and moves under normal conditions with extreme slowness. After the bite, it returns to its posture. The forest resumes its rhythm. And the Gaboon Viper continues waiting, invisible, exactly where it always was. But not everything that kills in this jungle does so from the ground. At the edge of the swamp, something over a meter tall has spent hours without moving. It has the appearance of an animal that belongs to another geological era, and it has the most lethal beak of any bird on this continent. In the wetlands of Central Africa, where the water remains still for entire weeks, and the vapor rising from the surface makes the horizon tremble, a silhouette stands out against the light. It does not move. It has spent hours without moving, standing on one of its long legs, with its gaze fixed on a spot on the water's surface that from the outside looks identical to any other spot. But it is not. For this animal, that spot is the center of the world. The shoebill can reach a height of 1.20 meters and weigh more than 5 kilograms. Its eyes, unlike the vast majority of birds, point forward. That gives it a binocular visual field comparable to that of the great cats, and an ability to calculate distances with a precision that birds with lateral eyes cannot match. Ornithologists describe its gaze as haunting, direct, as if it were evaluating instead of simply observing. But it is the beak that defines it, wide as an open hand, with a length exceeding 20 centimeters and a curved hook at the tip designed to let nothing go. The shoebill's beak generates a force in its hunting strike that no freshwater prey in the region can resist. The method is simple in concept and devastating in execution. It waits, it evaluates, and when the prey enters the exact radius, the entire body lunges forward in a movement that researchers describe as one of the most explosive strikes in the animal kingdom. The beak enters the water, traps, and in a matter of seconds, the prey has disappeared. Afterward, the shoebill shakes the contents of its beak to kill the prey before swallowing it, eliminating any risk of the animal struggling during deglutition. After that, it returns to the waiting posture, as if the attack had never happened, as if it had been like that for all eternity. The swamp returns to silence, and it continues to watch that spot in the water that only it can read. But in this jungle, there is something that does not wait. Something that moves, that decides, that remembers, and that can break a trunk with the hands it uses to select the most tender shoot of a plant. There is a moment when the forest changes. The branches bend without the wind explaining it. The leaves fall to one side for no apparent reason, and something with a mass that does not fit any of the other sounds of the forest moves among the trees. Then it appears. In the center of the group, serene but present in a way that fills everything, the largest animal among all the primates on Earth halts its march. This is the Eastern Lowland Gorilla, a species declared critically endangered with fewer than 4,000 individuals estimated in the wild. An adult male can weigh more than 200 kilograms and exceed 1.80 meters in height when standing up. The width of its thorax is disproportionate even for its size. It has the strength, according to biomechanical studies, of between 4 and 9 adult human beings in peak physical condition. And yet most of the day is dedicated to something that no predator would do: eating leaves. The Eastern Lowland Gorilla is a herbivore: roots, stems, bark, fruits when available. An adult male needs to consume up to 30 kilograms of vegetation daily to maintain that body mass. They spend more than half of their daylight hours searching for and processing food. That apparent docility hides the most complex social structure of any non-human primate in the region. The silverback, the dominant male whose back has acquired that grayish tone with maturity, does not lead the group by force. He leads it because he has accumulated decades of information about the territory, food sources, threats, and routes. The females choose to stay in his group because he guarantees the survival of their offspring better than any alternative. When something threatens the group, the transformation is physical and immediate. He rises to his full height. He beats his chest with his palms. That sound echoes among the trees and can be heard a kilometer away. And he releases a vocalization that researchers describe as impossible to ignore, even the first time it is heard. It is not a roar. It is something deeper and more deliberate. A warning that no animal in this jungle misinterprets. But a short distance from this peaceful giant, another inhabitant of the same forest floor does not rely on warnings. It charges directly, and it is large enough and fast enough that even the leopard reconsiders. Something breaks through the vegetation from within, not in a subtle way, with the force of something that does not need to go unnoticed because nothing in this forest stops it. The branches give way, the leaves fly to the sides, and for a second the forest opens a gap to show the largest Swede of the entire African continent. This is the giant forest hog, an animal that can exceed 200 kilograms and was formally described by science only in 1904. Despite living in one of the regions of the world most documented by 19th century naturalists. Its face says it all. The skin is tough, thickened around the eyes and cheeks as if the animal had been built expecting blows. The preorbital protrusions, structures of hardened skin above the eyes, function as facial protectors during confrontations with other males or with predators. The tusks emerge in a curve from the corners of the mouth, more useful for digging than for attacking, but capable of inflicting serious wounds when the animal uses them in a charge. It moves in family groups of up to 20 individuals. Within the group, the hierarchy is clear, but the protection is collective. When a piglet emits an alarm call, all the adults in the group react simultaneously. There is no delay. There is no individual evaluation. The response is immediate and coordinated. Its rooting activity is one of the most important ecological processes of this jungle floor. By turning over earth in search of roots, bulbs, and small vertebrates, the giant forest hog aerates the soil, breaks up layers of compacted leaves, and creates cavities that retain water during the dry season. Dozens of other species take advantage of these disturbances. When something threatens the group, the head lowers until it almost touches the ground. The weight shifts to the hind legs, and the animal charges at a speed that for its mass seems improbable. The big cats know it. In the territory of this jungle, a giant forest hog in defensive mode is an equation that most predators prefer not to solve. But not all the powerful animals of this forest need mass or speed. The next inhabitant weighs only a few kilograms, and yet it is the only mammal that lions do not know how to open. At midnight, along a path that only he knows, a creature travels the same road he traveled last night and will travel tomorrow. He is in no hurry. He has no need to be. Nothing in this jungle knows how to hurt him. This is the Giant Pangolin, the only mammal on the planet completely covered in scales. Each scale is made of keratin compressed in layers, the same material that forms human fingernails, but with a density and geometry that materials engineers are still studying. They overlap like the plates of medieval armor. When the animal curls up on itself, closing its body into a compact sphere, it leaves no soft spot exposed. Lions, leopards, hyenas, all have been documented trying to open that ball for several minutes before giving up and leaving. None have succeeded. But what makes the giant pangolin truly extraordinary is not its defense. It is the tongue. He has no teeth. He never had them. His jaw is a simplified structure because chewing was never part of the plan. Instead, the tongue can extend up to 70 centimeters beyond the mouth. It is anchored not at the base of the skull, as in other mammals, but at the sternum, allowing for that impossible reach. It is coated in a saliva so dense and sticky that insects that touch it cannot detach themselves from it. He can flick his tongue in and out 160 times per minute. An active giant pangolin consumes in a single night of foraging what a termite colony builds in weeks. Over the course of a year, A single individual eliminates approximately 70 million insects. Without this nocturnal and invisible work, the termite colonies of this jungle would grow without control, affecting the structure of thousands of trees whose roots are consumed from below. The giant pangolin is, in many ways, the silent maintenance service of this ecosystem, and it is also the most trafficked mammal in the world. Its meat is consumed as a delicacy in several Asian and African countries. Its scales are sold as traditional medicine despite having no documented pharmacological properties. An animal that the jungle has spent millions of years building, disappearing in the night markets of 3 continents. But in this same jungle, there is something that has spent decades defying even the categories of science. It is not a gorilla. It is not a known chimpanzee. The local inhabitants have had a name for it for generations, and primatologists still cannot agree on exactly what it is they have found. There are areas of the Congo jungle where paths are cut off, and the forest closes in a way that makes even the most experienced local guides slow their pace. In those areas, with almost no documented human presence, lives a population of primates that has spent decades resisting any attempt at definitive classification. They move in groups through extensive territories of closed jungle. Their behavior is recognizable in the fundamentals, and completely different in what matters. The first accounts arrived through hunters and communities in northern Congo. They described chimpanzees the size of gorillas that slept on the ground and did not flee from humans. Primatologists dismissed them for decades as local exaggerations, until researchers arrived and found the nests on the ground, not in the trees. This is the Bili chimpanzee, or giant forest chimpanzee. And its story is one of the most open primatological enigmas of the last 40 years. The documented males have a body structure notably more robust than any other known pan-troglodytes population. The width of the shoulders, the size of the skull, and the muscle mass of adult individuals are outside the standard range of the species. Primatologists with decades of experience have mistaken photographs of these individuals for young gorillas. But it is the behavior that generates the most questions. Building nests on the ground in a jungle where leopards are a constant threat is, from any evolutionary perspective, an anomaly that demands explanation. Common chimpanzees build elevated nests precisely to avoid those predators. That this population has abandoned that strategy suggests either that they have developed a sufficiently deterrent defense mechanism or that their relationship with the predators of this specific area is different from that of the rest of the species. The documented cooperative hunts are more organized, more silent, and more effective than those of any other studied chimpanzee population. Are they a different subspecies? A geographic variant with enough reproductive isolation to have drifted in its own direction? Or simply the most extreme end of normal variation within a species with extraordinary behavioral plasticity? Science has hypotheses. It has no answer. And in that absence of an answer lives one of the most fascinating primates this planet has produced. Just when the jungle seemed to be revealing its secrets, the next animal appears. It shares a habitat with the shoebill. It shares the water with the tigerfish, but where all of them hunt or dominate with force, this one has built its survival strategy on a single skill: disappearing. In the narrowest channels and the most hidden backwaters of the West African jungle, where the water moves so slowly that it seems solid, lives an animal that shares a last name with one of the most recognizable in Africa. But everything else is different. It does not live in noisy groups on the margins of great rivers. It does not spend the day semi-submerged with its mouth open to the sun. It travels the forest at night, alone, along paths that no one else uses. This is the pygmy hippopotamus, a species that Western science did not formally describe until 1849, despite the fact that the local communities of Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone had known it perfectly forever. It weighs between 180 and 250 kilograms. For someone accustomed to images of the common hippopotamus, which can exceed 3 tons, that makes it seem small. But in the forest, among the trunks and vegetation, it is a considerable mass that moves with a discretion that is almost inexplicable. Its legs are proportionally longer, its feet less webbed, its eyes situated more to the sides of the head. Everything points to an animal that evolved for the dense forest, not for open water. The skin produces a reddish secretion that for years was erroneously described as blood sweat. It is neither blood nor sweat. It is a mixture of organic acids that act as a sunscreen, a natural antibiotic, and a moisturizer simultaneously. A biochemical solution with no known equivalent in other mammals. At night, it travels exactly the same paths over and over again, with a fidelity to its roots that researchers have tracked for years through camera traps. This repetition is not a whim, it is efficiency. A known path is traveled quickly and in silence. It leaves its feces at specific points along the route that function as territorial markers and, unintentionally, as seed deposits that germinate far from the trees that produce them. Solitary, nocturnal, almost always invisible, an animal that the jungle keeps as one of its most carefully protected secrets. But not all the secrets of this jungle are silent. The next inhabitant is the complete opposite of the pygmy hippopotamus. Its fur burns red against the green of the forest as if it did not care about being seen, because it has a defense system that does not depend on hiding. Along the riverbanks and on the margins between the dense forest and the areas of lower vegetation, something moves in a group with an energy that contrasts with the slow pace of much of the life in this forest. Their fur is red. Not reddish-brown, red. The kind of color that in most ecosystems signals danger or poison. Here, it signals something else. Confidence. This is the red river hog, the most colorful suid on the African continent. Its body is compact, about 70 centimeters in height, and between 50 and 120 kilograms in weight depending on the individual. The contrast between the bright red fur and the white markings that run along the snout and surround the ears is so sharp that the first European naturalists who documented them were slow to believe they were a real animal and not a poorly colored taxidermy preparation. The ears end in tufts of dark hair that shake with every movement of the animal, visually amplifying the communication between individuals in the group. And the group is everything for this species. They move in family sounders of between 6 and 20 individuals with a cohesion that researchers describe as one of the most marked among African suids. Information travels between them in real time. An alarm signal emitted by the individual in the most exposed position activates the entire group in less than 2 seconds. There is no need to wait for the message to arrive. It has already arrived. As they move, their snout works constantly against the ground. Every excavation, every turning of the earth, every uprooted root leaves a disturbance that other species exploit. Insectivorous birds follow groups of red river hogs for exactly GU reason. The insects that escape the excavations are easy food for any bird that knows where to look. When danger appears, the group reorganizes in fractions of a second, the young in the center, the adults facing outward. And that red fur that seemed like a perfect target for any predator disappears among the vegetation with a speed that defies visual logic. The red fades into the green, and the forest returns them to silence as if they had never been there. But if the red river hog survives in community, the next inhabitant of this jungle does exactly the opposite. It operates in total solitude. No one knows when it is near, and the moment you discover it, the job is already done. In the darkness that settles beneath the canopy when the last streaks of daylight disappear, something begins to move. Without sound, without signals, with a displacement so calculated that the leaves beneath its paws barely whisper. Most animals in this forest will never detect it. Not because the leopard is the fastest, not because it is the largest, but because it is the absolute master of something that in this jungle is worth more than any other skill, not existing until the exact moment it decides to exist. This is the African leopard, the only big cat capable of thriving in almost any habitat on the continent, from open savannas to closed jungles. And in this jungle, where visibility is measured in meters and prey can hear from 100 meters away, it has perfected a version of itself that far exceeds the already formidable average of its species. Its fur in the jungle tends to be darker than that of its savanna counterparts. The rosettes are denser and closer together, creating a pattern that, in the gloom of the forest, turns it into an extension of the environment. It climbs trees with an ease that continues to baffle those who study it. It can vertically drag prey that weighs twice as much as itself, holding it with its teeth while climbing with all four legs. There is no other cat on the planet capable of doing that with such a weight-to-load ratio. It carries the prey up the trees for a reason that makes more sense in this jungle than anywhere else. Here, if you leave something on the ground in a matter of minutes, you will have competition. Its senses are calibrated for the darkness. The photoreceptor cells of its retina give it a night vision capacity that triples that of the human eye in low-light conditions. Its vibrissae, the whiskers, detect changes in the airflow that informative obstacles and movement around it even when sight is insufficient. And it hunts with a patience that has no equivalent among cats of its size. It can follow a prey for hours, reducing the distance without the target animal noticing, waiting for the instant when attention relaxes, the instant when the head turns in the wrong direction. Then, in 2 or 3 seconds of controlled explosion, everything ends. Afterwards, the forest returns it to the darkness, and the leopard becomes the invisible one it always was. In this same jungle, however, lives an animal that needs none of those skills to survive. It does not hunt, it does not hide its food. It does not need to be fast or silent. It survives because it has something that no predator in this forest can overcome. A social structure capable of transmitting information across generations. Among the meanders of the rivers of southern Congo, in a strip of jungle that exists nowhere else in the world, because this is the only place where this animal exists, a group of primates moves through the branches and on the ground with a fluidity that speaks of decades of shared knowledge. They communicate constantly, they touch, they look at each other, they emit sounds that researchers have spent decades trying to decipher without yet having exhausted the inventory. Their faces register internal states in a way that is uncomfortable to observe because it is all too recognizable. This is the bonobo, the non-human primate genetically closest to the human being along with the common chimpanzee, with which it shares exactly the same percentage of DNA with our species, 98.7%. But if the common chimpanzee is the relative that chose hierarchy and competition as its primary evolutionary strategy, the bonobo chose something different. Their societies are organized around the bonds between adult females. A female bonobo arriving at a new group is not a newcomer without status. She can build alliances with other established females in a matter of days, and those alliances hold real power over the group dynamic. A male bonobo, regardless of his size or physical capacity, cannot exercise dominance over a female who has the backing of other females. That has measurable consequences for the behavior of the group. Episodes of physical violence within the group are significantly less frequent than in common chimpanzees. Conflicts are interrupted and resolved through affiliative behaviors that primatologists have been documenting for decades and still do not fully understand in their entire functional dimension. They are not pacifists in any absolute sense. They have hierarchies, they have conflicts, they have competition for resources. But the repertoire of tools they use to manage that tension is qualitatively different from that of any other non-human primate. They learn by observing. They transmit what they have learned to the young during years of slow and intensive rearing. Knowledge about which fruits are ripe in which part of the forest, at what time of year, is not in any DNA. It is in the group memory that each generation builds upon the previous one. In this jungle, that is worth as much as fangs or speed. But the African jungle also harbors animals of a rarity that makes even the most experienced primatologists stop. The next one was considered a myth for centuries. Science formally denied its existence until someone arrived with the hide, and it turned out to be something that no one had ever classified. In the heart of the densest forest, where the trunks are so thick that 2 people could not wrap their arms around them, and the ground is covered with vegetation that muffles every footstep, something large moves among the trees with a lightness that seems incompatible with its size. Its flanks are an intense reddish chestnut, its legs marked with white stripes that shine in the gloom, and atop its head, spiral horns that rise and twist with a geometry that seems more like sculpture than biology. This is the bongo, the largest antelope in the African jungle, and one of the most difficult animals to observe in the wild on the entire continent. It can reach 300 kilograms and exceed 180 centimeters in length. Its horns, possessed by both males and females in a rarity among antelopes, can grow over a meter long. But they are designed not only for combat between males, but for something more practical in a dense forest. The bongo can tilt its head back until the horns are parallel to its back, drastically reducing its lateral profile and allowing it to pass through vegetation that would otherwise block its path. An animal of its size moving through the dense forest without making a sound. That requires years of learning the territory. It eats at dawn and dusk when the light is low and the large predators have slightly less of an advantage. The rest of the time it remains motionless among the densest vegetation, using its color and stripes as passive camouflage. It has an extraordinarily sensitive alarm system. At the slightest change in the sense of the wind, at the first sound that does not fit, the bongo can disappear into the vegetation at a speed that its size makes seem impossible. Most of the filmed material of this species comes from conservation reserves. In the wild, seeing a bongo is one of those experiences that the most veteran local guides recount as something that happens only a few times in an entire career. It exists at the limits of the visible, and it could disappear for good before science finishes understanding it. However, there is an animal in this jungle that was invisible to Western science for much longer. Local inhabitants knew of it. Explorers returned with descriptions that the natural history museums of Europe dismissed as confusion, until the hide reached London, and what it revealed did not fit any known animal. In the densest and most remote stretches of the Congo forest, where the light arrives so fragmented that the ground looks like a map of golden spots and black shadows, lives an animal that Western zoology was slow to accept because its description sounded like an invention. A body like that of a robust equid, a neck and a head that unequivocally recalled a miniature giraffe, and hind legs with black and white stripes so marked that the first explorers who described it were accused of combining characteristics of 3 different animals. It was all real. This is the okapi, formally described in 1901, and the only living relative of the giraffe on the entire planet. Its evolutionary divergence from the giraffe occurred approximately 11 million years ago. Since then, the okapi remained confined to the humid jungles of the Congo, while its tall relative adapted to the open plains, 2 opposite strategies from the same origin. The adult okapi weighs between 200 and 350 kilograms. It is, despite its striking markings, extraordinarily difficult to see in the forest. The stripes on its legs break its silhouette against the play of filtered light, causing the brain to fail to correctly process the animal's contours, even when it is only a few meters away. Its tongue is dark blue, almost black, and can extend 45 centimeters beyond the mouth. With it, it reaches leaves and buds on branches that would be inaccessible without that reach. And according to observations documented in captivity and in the wild, it also uses it to clean its eyelids and the inside of its ears, an anatomical capability with no known equivalent in any other ungulate. It communicates primarily through infrasonics, frequencies so low that the human ear cannot perceive them. That capability, discovered relatively late, partly explains why, for decades, it seemed that okapis lived in complete social isolation. It was not silence. It was a conversation at a frequency that no one was listening to. The species is listed as endangered. Deforestation and poaching have steadily reduced its range over the last decades. An animal that evolution took 11 million years to build, that the jungle kept secret for centuries, that science was slow to believe existed, and that is now running out of time. But if the okapi lives close to the ground and in the shade of the trees, the last inhabitant we will visit on this journey observes everything mentioned above from the heights. From the highest point of the canopy, where the light arrives in full and the wind has no obstacles. And from there, with a vision that multiplies that of the human eye several times over, it does not miss a single detail of what happens below. Above the canopy, where the trees end and the sky begins, a silhouette with spread wings glides on the rising air currents without a single flap. It needs no effort to stay up there. It has spent hours in that same sector of the sky. Looking down, this is the African crowned eagle, the bird of prey with the highest documented strength-to-weight ratio of any eagle on the planet. Its wingspan exceeds 180 centimeters. Its weight is around 4 kilograms. And its rear talons can generate a closing pressure that biomechanical studies estimate between 400 and 450 kilograms per square centimeter, sufficient to fracture the skull of an adult primate upon first contact. It does not need to kill twice. Its most frequent prey are medium-sized monkeys, small antelopes, and ungulates weighing up to 15 kilograms. But there are documented records of attacks on significantly heavier animals. In areas where it coexists with primate groups, they have developed specific alarm calls for the crowned eagle, distinct from those used to warn of cats or snakes. They have long been learning to distinguish it from other aerial threats. The flight of this eagle is silent by design, not by chance. The edges of its flight feathers have a microstructure that breaks up air turbulence during gliding, eliminating the aerodynamic sound that normally accompanies the flight of birds of its size. A solution that evolved independently in owls and in this eagle, and which in both cases serves the same objective, that the prey does not hear until it is too late. From its position in the heights, it can remain completely motionless on a branch for prolonged periods. Its vision detects movement 200 meters away with a resolution that allows it to distinguish a monkey among the branches, even when the vegetation partially blocks the line of sight. When it decides to act, the descent is straight, fast, and noiseless. The speed reached in the dive can exceed 160 kilometers per hour in the final meters before impact. The talons close, and the forest records a new data point in the permanent balance of this jungle. Somewhere in this jungle, the ground trembles. Not much, just enough for the animals that have been here long enough to notice. A tremor that does not come from the sky or the wind. It comes from the ground itself. And a few seconds later, among the trunks, something appears that suddenly makes all the surrounding trees look smaller. This is the African forest elephant, a distinct species, not a variety of the savanna elephant. A different species with its own genome, evolutionarily separated from its relative of the open plains millions of years ago. Its size is smaller than that of the savanna elephant, but only by comparison. It is still the heaviest terrestrial animal in the African jungle. An adult male can exceed 4,000 kilograms. Its tusks are straighter, shorter, and point downward instead of forward. A direct adaptation to the dense forest, long horizontal tusks would constantly get caught between the trunks. The forest elephant's tusks are designed for digging in search of roots and minerals in the ground, not for projecting outward. Its ears are smaller and more rounded. Less surface area to dissipate heat, because in the humid jungle the temperature does not require the same cooling system as in the open savanna. Everything in its anatomy is a response to this specific environment. And what makes this animal truly irreplaceable for the ecosystem is not in what it is, but in what it does as it moves through it. The forest elephant creates paths. It opens clearings by knocking down trees and tearing out vegetation, allowing light to reach the ground and giving species that cannot compete under the closed canopy the space to grow. That disturbance, which at first glance seems like destruction, is actually one of the primary drivers of the plant diversity in this forest. By defecating along its routes, it disperses the seeds of dozens of tree species over distances that no other animal in this forest can match. There are trees in the Congo jungle whose seeds are too large to be dispersed by birds or rodents. Only the digestive tract of the forest elephant can process those seeds and deposit them viably miles away from the original tree. If the forest elephant disappears from an area, those trees stop reproducing in that area. And when those trees disappear, the animals that depend on their fruits disappear as well, and those that depend on those animals. The African forest elephant is not simply the largest animal in this jungle. It is part of the architecture that allows everything else to exist. On this journey, we have traversed one of the most complex and ancient ecosystems on the planet. Rivers where death lurks without color or sound. Swamps where figures, motionless for hours, tear down the myth of patience. Ground where perfect camouflage has been perfected for millions of years without any human eye overseeing it. Canopies where strength and precision merge into something that no engineer has been able to reproduce. Each of these animals is the result of an evolutionary process that exceeds any time scale the human brain can easily visualize. The Goliath Tigerfish has spent tens of millions of years refining that trap of interlocking teeth. The Gaboon Viper took a similar amount of time to perfect that pattern of scales that no computer can generate with equal efficacy. The forest elephant has been in this forest longer than the human being has been on any continent. And yet, in less than 2 centuries of human industrial activity, many of these animals have been reduced to fractions of their historical populations. The most trafficked pangolin on the planet, the critically endangered gorilla, the okapi losing territory every year. The forest elephant, whose disappearance would drag down with it dozens of plant species that depend on it to reproduce. This jungle is not a museum. It is a functioning system that has been here since before our species existed, and every animal that inhabits it is a piece that the system cannot lose without transforming into something different, something quieter, something emptier. If this journey has left you wanting to know more, like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Each subscription allows us to continue producing documentaries that bring to the screen the corners of the planet that most people will never set foot in. The next documentary is already here. New creatures, new territories, and new questions that the natural world has not yet finished answering.